Today we will be looking at designing studies vocab and intro to data. We will ask ourselves, well, what is data? Well, data can be numbers, they can be names, or they can be other labels. Important thing to note here, not all data represented by numbers are numeric data. For example, the ISBN number on the back of a textbook is just another name for the book. Some surveys will say 1 represents female, 2 represents male. In other words, data is useless without its context. So notice we have this table here, and we don't really know what it is we have. It looks like we have some states, some serial numbers of some sort, country, county, yeses and nos, and some numbers. So without context, we really don't know what it is we're looking at. A data table is a way to show organized data. Notice that it tells us the what's in the columns, so we're collecting names, where we're shipping to, the price, an area code, previous purchased, is it a gift, an ID number, and whatever artist. And the who is who we gathered the data from, is the rows. So notice we have Catherine's data, Sam's data, Chris's, and Monique's. A categorical or qualitative variable names categories and answers questions about how cases fall into those categories. An example of this would be like gender or ethnicity. Whereas a quantitative variable is a measured variable, usually has some sort of unit, that answers questions about the quantity of what is being measured. Examples of a quantitative variable include income with a unit money, height in inches usually, and weight in this country pounds. Take a few minutes and identify whether each variable is categorical or quantitative. Here are the results. Number of calories in a pint of ice cream. Well, quantitative. The color of an M&M candy would be categorical. Whether or not you ate breakfast, categorical. And the weight of an airplane, quantitative. Other things to note, some variables, they can be categorical or quantitative depending on how you want to use them. For example, a survey could ask you about your age. This would be quantitative if the survey wanted to know the average age of its customers. This would be categorical if they wanted to think of your age in terms of child, teen, adult, or senior, because it is categorized. So in other words, you must think about why you are looking at that specified variable and then make that choice. Often cases are a sample of cases selected from some larger population that we would like to understand. The population is the entire group of individuals we wish to know about. So when we talk about population, it's more thinking of everyone. Everyone. Whereas a sample is just a subset of that population. Subset. So it's like a small group from the population. Here's our next example. We are in March of 2007. Consumer Reports published an evaluation of high screen definition television, HDTVs. The magazine purchased and tested 98 different models from a variety of manufacturers. We want to identify the sample and the population. Okay, so our sample would be who we collected the data from. So in this case, our 98 HD TVs. This is who we collected data from. Our population is what we will generalize about from that sample. So if we collected data on the TVs, on 98 specifically, then our population would be all HD TVs. Often, again, sample survey is a study questioning a sample about the population. We're hoping to learn something from that population. If I have some sort of data value that comes directly from the sample, we call that a statistic. So notice if I have a sample stat or a stat that comes specifically from the sample, we call whatever that data value is a statistic. If we have a study questioning a sample of a population and we're learning still something about that population, if the data value comes specifically from the population, we call that a parameter. Sometimes we don't know what it is, and remember, it is not the size of the population. So if my data value is obtained from the population, we call that a parameter, whatever that data value is. Okay, so this table here, this is stuff we've already talked about parameters, but this table here, these symbols are the difference between statistic and parameter that we will use throughout the course of the year. So if I have an X bar, this is the sample mean. This lowercase s, this is the sample standard deviation. Once we start generalizing about the population, we will use a mu for the mean and a sigma for the population. Okay. Now let's look at some examples. We want to know if the data value from the survey was a parameter or was it a statistic. So note we have a study of 456 high school students by the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion reports that 21.7% of U.S. teens never or rarely wear seatbelts. Take a minute and kind of think about it and see what you're thinking. Okay. Well, notice we have a study of 456 high school students. That's probably critical information, so I'm going to underline that. By the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion reports that 21.7% of U.S. teens never or rarely wear seatbelts. Okay, that 21.7%, that's the data value I want to know. Is it a parameter or a statistic? So that 21.7%, did that come from the 456 high school students? In this case, we're going to say yes. That means the 21.7% is what we refer to as a statistic. Let's look at the second example. Of all students at Bellevue East, 45 are students who have been absent more than 2 weeks of the semester. Okay, couple key things. We have all students at East, and we have 45 are students who have been absent for more than 2 weeks. Now, because that 45 comes from all students at East, you're going to actually say this is a parameter. In our last example, we're going to practice identifying the population, sampling frame, the sample, the parameter, and the statistic. Now, the sampling frame is important to note. We haven't talked about this yet, but it's actually very simple. The sampling frame is simple. It is simply those available to the researcher to study. So now let's get into our example. The study is done to determine how many hours per week students spend online. 25 students from each grade at East are asked their internet habits. The results show that on average, students spend about an hour and a half each night of the week online. So, first question, what is the population? Well, who is it that we're hoping to learn about? We're hoping to generalize in general about all students. The sampling frame, remember, is those available for us to ask. So who is available for us to ask? In this case, it is the students at East. The sample, meaning who is it specifically did we ask? Well, there's a clue here. Note it says 25 students from each grade at East. So That's going to be our sample. Our parameter, what is it we're trying to generalize about the students? Do we really know? Not really. I mean, you could technically say we're trying to learn how many hours a week students are online, but it's kind of vague. And then last but not least, the statistic, meaning what actually came from our sample, that would be the hour and a half online. And this is where we see that in our words. Yay, we're at the end. Okay, so now you are ready to work on your data and sampling practice. The end.